By the end of this video, you'll have set up a chat interface for your entire company, and it will be branded, and you will control the server on which the data is flowing. Just see how quickly you'll get responsiveness. Tell me about planets in our solar system. The beauty of this model is that, again, you control all of your data. You can control even the branding of the product. So you don't have the risk of information going outside your company. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how to build this by spinning up a server. I'll go through every step in detail. I'm guessing it's going to take about 30 minutes. So there is some setup involved, but just look how beautiful that experience is, and you'll be able to allow everybody in your organization to access this customized chat with your own brand name. Let me give you a very high-level overview of how to deploy an enterprise AI language model. You will need two things. You'll need to set up a server, for which we'll use text-generation-inference, and you'll need to set up an app, for which we will bootstrap it with Chat UI, both from Hugging Face. And this is really not too much work done to get it set up. You'll also need a GPU, and I'll show you and make a recommendation of which GPU you can use from AWS. You can also use Google Cloud, Azure, or Oracle. I'm going to do an install on a base computer, an EC2 instance that has nothing else installed, so I'll install all of the requirements. I'll also recommend a GPU. I'm going to recommend a T4 GPU with 16 gigabytes of RAM. This will allow you to run Llama 7B or 13B. If you want even higher quality, you could use a larger GPU, but this should suffice for the demo I just showed at the start of this video. Now, you will need a language model. As I alluded to, we'll use Llama 7B. You can easily use 13B with the same GPU, or you can use a larger GPU if you want even better precision that approaches GPT 3.5. And what you're going to get from this video is a language model chatbot that you can run for your company. You'll be able to give your employees access just through the website that you control. You control the data, you control the serving, the server, and you will even control the branding. Mentioned in the PowerPoint, there are two key setup parts. We have to set up the API, and then we have to set up the app. I'll show you how to get the server set up on AWS. I'll go through setting up text-generation-inference, which is the API, and then I'll go through setting up the app, which is called Chat UI, and customize it to your own company's branding. Now, all of these documents in detail are available for purchase. I'll put a link below, but I'll also just put links. If you want to do a DIY approach, I'll give you links to text-generation-inference and also to Chat UI, who have their own separate install instructions. The benefit, of course, if you do want the full detailed instructions, is I've gone through and configured the parameters so it should run on the first shot. So it might save you a little time, or if you're savvy, you can probably figure it out yourself. So let's get started. The very first step is to set up a server. I'm going to recommend Amazon. They allow you to set up a server with a GPU attached, and it's a clean slate server. So there's nothing pre-installed really, just some basic things. And that allows a clean slate on top of which we will install the drivers for the GPU. They're the Nvidia drivers because it's a T4 Nvidia GPU. You can also use Oracle. I haven't looked into it. I did try using Microsoft Azure, and I found that I could only use the GPU within their machine learning part of their services, which had a lot of things pre-installed, and I found made it a bit more complicated to install. So I'm sure there is a way to do it easily with Azure, but I haven't figured it out yet, and I'm going to show you the clean slate approach with AWS. So the first thing is we're going to set up a server, and we're going to select a T4. So we're going to select this instance type, which has a T4 attached. Now, you will have to request permission to use that instance. So it may take a day or half a day to get response from Amazon AWS support. This is 16 gigabytes in size. It's going to fit Llama 7B. It could fit Llama 13B because we're doing it in quantized form, which I'll talk about later. I think this is great for getting started. If you wanted, you could go for larger instances and even fit 70B, which will provide a bit more accuracy. But if you're doing it the first time, I definitely recommend starting with this size. So let's head over to Amazon, and we're going to launch an instance. So here, let's just call it something. I'm going to call it Llama demo, something like this. Let me see, in fact, if I need to match any of the instructions I've set up. That's fine. So Llama demo, I'm going to select the Ubuntu server at 22.04. It's a pretty standard server with 64-bit x86 architecture. Now, here, I'm going to filter for instance types, and I'm going to look for that instance I mentioned, which is the G4DN 2x large. So let's paste that in here. And let's see if we can find that instance here. And select instance type. Okay, so we've done that. And what we're going to do here is create a new key pair, because I want to show you every step. I'm going to use a PEM file, and I will call this, I'll delete it all after this demo, but let's call it Llama demo. Well, Llama demo, create key pair. And for this demo, I'm just going to save it onto my computer. Do not lose that PEM file, because that's what allows you access to your instance. If you lose access to it, you risk losing access to all of your data, which is a pro and a con, because it means only you have access to the data. But if you lose it, then nobody will have access to the data. So you may want to select a security group. You might want to get some help from ChatGPT on selecting that. I'm going to select a group that I've already used previously. This controls who has access to the ports, but basically we're going to SSH into the server, and the commands will be provided in very shortly in the next step. So security groups are probably going to be more important when we want to expose the website to a domain name, like if we want to host it at a given domain. Now for the storage, I'm going to put in 1028. That's a lot more than what we need. The 7B model to download is 13 gigabytes, and the 13B is 26 gigabytes, but storage is not that expensive, so I recommend putting it in there. Just note the price here. This is roughly €1 or $1 per hour, so $24 a day. That's roughly the cost you're thinking of if you want to run your own chatbot for your own company. And keep in mind that you will want to see if that's appropriate for the number of users you have. The more users you have, then the more powerful GPU you need. So you need to scale to having more instances. But I'm just going to give you the very basic, which I think would be fine for a few users. If you have a handful of concurrent users, it's probably fine. Okay. And so we have some storage here, and that should be sufficient. And I don't think I need to set anything else up, so I'm going to launch the instance. Looks like that was successful. So now we're running. And what I want to do next is I want to SSH. So I want to connect into the instance. So I click on connect, clicked on SSH, and I'm going to copy this here. Now I am following the setup instructions here. This here is basically the instruction that I want to run so that I can connect to my server. There's one thing I've added here, which is a port mapping. So later when we run the app, we're going to run it on port 5173 on the server, and we want to map that to the port on my computer, in this case 5173, so I can view it in my browser. Now, after all of this would be set up, you could later link this to a domain, so your own company's website, like research.yourcompanyname.com or chat.yourcompany.com. But for now, I'm just going to port it to my browser so that I can eventually see the chatbot appear in my browser, as I showed right at the start of this video. So here is the SSH type command that we want to set up. And let's just edit that slightly. So typically what I would do here is go across to my terminal, go to CD downloads. So I'm in my downloads folder, which is where my PEM file is. I'm going to have to apply the correct permissions to my PEM file to be read. Basically, we want to provide read-only permissions so that it can be read when we sign in, but it can't be modified by other users. This is called llama demo.pem. So I've just applied those permissions in the download folder. Now I'm going to move back into my original folder. And the next thing is I'm actually going to create a script to start up the server. So I'll do touch llama demo.sh to create a script, then nano llama demo.sh. So I'm now in the script. And I need to run this from where my PEM file is. So I know the font is small, but I'll call it out here. And it's first necessary to cd into my downloads folder, which is where my PEM file is. And then I can SSH into the server. But just as I mentioned here from the setup instructions, we actually want to use a modified SSH so that we also map the port. And so what I'm going to do is copy that portion of the port mapping so that it's now here. And Control K deletes lines. Now Control X to save, Y, and then enter, and that is now saved. Okay, I've just increased the font size, so that should be a little bit easier. And now we're going to run this script. So we'll do /llama demo.sh. And that shows me I've forgotten to provide permissions to run that script. So chmod +x llama demo.sh. Then I can run the script. So now it's asked me for the authenticity, and I'm going to say yes. And now I'm logged into this server. You can see there are no files because I've just done ls. So we'll move now to the next step of the install. So we've basically got the server running at this point, and we're going to move to install the text generation interface. So here, we're going to make some general updates to the operating system, which is Ubuntu. The next step is to install the Nvidia driver. So we'll go ahead and make sure the Nvidia driver is installed. And then we'll get the latest CUDA hardware. So this will upgrade to the very latest. So copy that and install. Next, we're going to install Docker because we're going to run text generation interface using Docker. So we'll install this here. And note that in some of these cases, you will need to accept commands in order to move forward. And once Docker installed, then we're going to add our user to the Docker group. Here, this is a pretty permissive approach. It means as a user, I can do pretty much anything. You may want to restrict those user permissions depending on the users you have accessing your system. So once Docker is installed, we will run that. Add user permissions. Next up, we'll add the Nvidia the container toolkit. This allows us to basically work with Docker and with the Nvidia GPU. And the last step will be to reboot the server just to make sure that all of the drivers are installed. So we'll reboot. And I'll give that a second to reboot, but the next thing I'll be doing, we're getting very close to running text generation inference. We're going to create a script. This is the script here. It's to run Docker, and we're going to run it with all GPUs. We're going to run the API on this port, 8080. This is text generation interface inference. So this is the program we're running using Docker. We're going to use the model here. We're going to use Llama 2 7B chat. And you can use 13B, it'll fit on the server as well. You do need to get a Hugging Face token. So for that, you want to go to Hugging Face. You want to go to your settings, access tokens, and then grab a read token here. Just copy it into the file. And any other notes I have? Yeah, just this is setting the volume, making sure that the model is being saved to data, so it'll only be downloaded once, which will make it quicker the next times. We're going to quantize. Quantize means it makes the models smaller, it shrinks it in size. Normally I'd recommend GPTQ, but there are some bugs being worked out there. I'll update it when it's available, but for now use NF4, which is another 4-bit quantization. And also I've set the max number of tokens to 4,000. You can set it to 16,000 if you want to use something like Code Llama. Just one note as well, that if you want to use Meta Llama, you will need to request access to that repo, which can take a day to get accepted. This is not gated, so you can just use this repo. And honestly, Code Llama works pretty well as a general chatbot as well, so you might just consider doing that. Okay, so you're going to run touch tgi.sh. That will create a script, then provide permission to run the script, and then do nano tgi.sh. So that will open up the script, and you want to paste in this content. Once you've done that, you can run /tgi.sh. Oops, I actually need to start the server first, which is called Llama demo. Now I can run tgi.sh. And if you want to see Docker logs, see the logs, see the tail. So I want to see 5 lines of the logs from this container. You can see that the weights have been downloaded, the files are present, and it's starting a shard here. So we can just check again. This is okay. It's because we're using a T4. So if we were using a more modern GPU, this warning might not appear. Just waiting for the shards to get ready. It'll take a little second. Okay, model is being warmed up. This is good. And yeah, invalid host name, that's fine. It's just defaulting to zeros as the host name, which is fine for our initial setup. So now what we're going to do is move to setting up Chat UI. First step here is to clone the repo. So we just git clone the Hugging Face Chat UI, very quick. Now, in order to run Chat UI, there needs to be a database that's hosted on the server. It's really easy to set up a Mongo database using Docker. Just put in that command and the Mongo database will be running. So we're already up and running with the Mongo database. So next up, the last thing is we need to set up Chat UI. To set up Chat UI, we need npm because we want to do npm. We want to do npm install, but to do npm install, we first need to have Node. So we're going to install nvm. Basically, the default version of Node is going to be quite old. So we'll install nvm. Once nvm, which is Node Version Manager, is installed, we will do nvm install node. I think this will actually install npm as well. So we may only need one other command. I do recommend following these steps here just to avoid closing and reopening the terminal. And now we'll do nvm install node. I believe can take a little bit of time or not. So we can just cd into Chat UI and then we can do npm install. Let's see. Yeah, so we don't actually need to. We don't need to explicitly install npm. Okay, and once that's done, we now need to configure Chat UI. So to configure Chat UI, we need to set up a .env.local. So we'll set up .env.local and we will open that up. And what we need to paste in here is a couple of values. So you want to customize what you want the public app name to be. You can customize the graphics, but you would need to upload some favicons. That is possible. Upload them into a folder of a name. You can check out the Chat UI folder and see what's in it, just so you know what size favicons are needed. pick a color. Now, this will already be correctly set if you set up the MongoDB as I recommended. This here needs to be updated because we're using not the Code Llama model. So I need to update both of these parameters. So let's just do that. And actually, we are using the chat-HF model. So let's scroll down here and update this to here. And actually, we are going to be using Llama 7b chat. Fine. And this here should all be correct. If you like, you can update the message. So I'll just put in, you are a helpful assistant. Go with. Temperature, you can set it low if you want to have less, if you want to show the most probable next tokens. Basically, if you want accurate tasks like summarizing, you should set it low, like towards 0 as opposed to 0, 1. If you want more like creating generative like stories or things, you should set it higher. I kind of like setting it pretty low. So I'm going to put it like that. And you notice this is the endpoint for TGI. So this is telling Chat UI to send requests to the language model via text generation inference. So let me just commit those changes and say update model specs for Chat UI. Commit the changes. Scroll down here and copy all of this and paste it in here. Control X, Y, and enter. Now we have everything set up and ready to go. I'll just check if there's any more steps. It's just npm run dev, npm run dev. Now you can copy this link here and go to your browser. Control or Command T. Let's see if we have any joy. Here we are. Greetings. Sorry, just refreshed. Nice to meet you. And yeah, you can now chat away. You can even delete some chats over here if you like. You can start a new chat. And all of this is being hosted on the server. So you could very easily serve this to your whole organization. You can even, if you look at the chat UI section of Hugging Face, you'll be able to find here some password options. So you can even add in password protection. You could even connect it to your Microsoft account or your Google account so that you have a password protected portal that allows your employees or your team members to log in and securely chat. Of course, all of the data is on the Mongo database, which you fully control because it's on the AWS server. So I think this is a pretty nice way to, you can even share the conversation. Of course, sharing won't work right now because I'm sharing from an address that's ported to my laptop. But if you have this set up pointed to a domain, maybe something like using something like Nginx, Nginx, and setting up SSL certificates, you could very easily have a setup here where you have password protection, you allow employees to create chats. And I think the quality is really not too far off GPT 3.5. So if it compares to your team having access to nothing versus your team having access to a chatbot like this, where there's total control of the information, I think this is a lot better and a great option to consider. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Let me know what you'd like done differently. Let me know if you'd like anything further explained. As I mentioned, the full instructions, they'll be available. You'll be able to purchase access to the GitHub repo below. If you do have any questions, post them on YouTube. If you've even more detailed questions, I'll try to answer them in the GitHub repo once you've gotten access. All right, folks, cheers.